What happens when it's time for an elite athlete to literally hang up their boots? When the scoreboard's gone dark and the crowds are quiet, and the athlete has to look at what life is going to look like post being in the spotlight. Today's guest has 16 years of executive leadership experience in one of New Zealand's most beloved sporting brands, and that is the Warriors, the rugby league team of New Zealand. Not only that, but what she's doing today is working with elite athletes post being in the spotlight, where they are tapping into sharing and contributing their knowledge and their wisdom and their lived experiences for future generations so that it contributes to their identity as leaders as well as their purpose as human beings. Petrece Kesha, today's guest, her family has their fingerprints all over New Zealand's rugby league history. And it's my absolute pleasure to bring her onto the Influence Gap so she can share with us her ideas and her learnings around building high performing teams, around integrity in leadership, especially around building community and connection in today's world. So please welcome Petrece Kesha. Hey, this is Bernadette McClelland, and welcome to the Influence Gap. This is the show where leaders come to close the gap between intention and impact so that they can have the right conversations, make the right decisions, and achieve the results that matter the most. Petrece Kesha, welcome to the Influence Gap.
Thanks, Bernadette.
I've actually really been doing a little bit of reading up, a little bit of research for this because I'm not a very good Kiwi when it comes to sports. But I'm really, really happy to have you and have this conversation with you on a few levels, and those levels will come out as we have our conversation. But the reason why I have asked you, because I think that your background is amazing, and I think you've got so much value to add to the people who listen to this show, and they're predominantly senior leaders, sales leaders, business owners, high professional salespeople. And your story speaks to those people. So when we look at your career, we see a lot of sport, but you actually started off in the world of sales anyway.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and you had a pretty big team.
Yeah, I've had a couple of sort of different sort of sales types of jobs. So cold calling. I cold called for a what were they? A security firm. Yeah,
Oh,
so I cold called for a security firm. I've account managed a team of on the road salespeople. That was for one of our big dairy companies over here, mainland. I've also done sales for conferences in the hospitality sector.
mm,
Yeah, so I've done lots of sort of different sales jobs. I've worked for one of the big sort of hygiene companies over here as well. That was cold calling too. So yeah, lots of different sales roles.
awesome. And that accent that we're picking up is a Kiwi accent.
This is very much a Kiwi accent. Yes, 100%. Born and bred.
So that the sales background has definitely helped you to where you are today, and I want to go through that journey with us on this conversation, because those skills carried you into a new era, which was into the world of football,
Yeah, rugby league.
rugby league, and I mentioned before that I'm not a very good Kiwi because I grew up. I grew up with rugby union and rugby league, the two codes in New Zealand. But I actually really follow Australian rules. And well, my husband says I don't even think you follow that too well because you barrack for Collingwood. So people in the know with Australian rules will know exactly what my husband means by that. But anyway, so coming back to your role, you were part of the team at the Warriors. So the Warriors is New Zealand's rugby league team.
It's the rugby league team that competes in the NRL competition, which is the National Rugby League competition that operates out of Australia. So the Warriors are the only New Zealand team that competes in that competition. Yes.
Yeah, so it's almost like cousins. Come on, we'll bring you over to Australia, and so they compete with the local Australian teams in the rugby league.
Yes,
Rugby,
because it's the only professional competition available.
right, got it. And then rugby union is the All Blacks. So just so that people understand, that's the All Blacks that we all know
Yeah.
about.
So I guess the New Zealand equivalent, the rugby league equivalent to the All Blacks is the New Zealand Kiwis.
Kiwis.
So yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. Got it. So tell us about your role at the Warriors. Um, for those that don't know, the Warriors is also nicknamed the Wars.
The Waz.
Up
Yep.
the Wars.
The Waz. Yep.
So tell us about your role there at the Warriors.
So I was at the Warriors for 16 years, and my role really changed. I actually got my foot in the door while I was at university. So I was a mature student at
Mm-hmm.
university doing my Bachelor of Business, and as part of that program, we did an internship. And so in your third year of study, you would get invited along to a bit of a networking session, and there were different sporting organisations in the room, and you would kind of pitch yourself, and then they would pitch jobs, and then you would apply for those kind of roles and things like that. And I actually gate crashed in my second year. So I actually went along in my second year, not my third year, and because I had already decided that I needed to be at the Warriors. So and so what I did was I gate crashed, and I pretty much bowled up to the Warrior guy, and I said, "You don't need to bother coming to this next year because I'm your student next year."
Oh, love it.
Yeah, and he did too. So he gave me his contact details, and he said, "Get in touch." And I was like, "Yeah, great." I said, "So when do you come back from Christmas break? Because, our Christmas period and everything like that." And he sort of said, "I get back on the 20th of January." I said, "Great, I'll email you on the 22nd." And I did. And that was pretty much how I got my foot in the door. And so I worked for them sort of that whole year. So I did the full year with them. For university, we only had to do something like 12 weeks. But I stayed for the full year because I wanted to see exactly what happened in the club across a full season. And and I did all sorts of things. I pumped up footballs, I stuffed envelopes, I, babysat players, I did all sorts of things. And then at the end of that year, I actually got a full-time job. So I had to apply for the job. I had to interview for the job, and then I got the job. And that was at the end of 2007. So that was kind of how my life at the Warriors started. And
Why did you want to go specifically to the Warriors?
because rugby league is really my passion,
Uh-huh.
I kind of got into my business degree, which I did a double major in marketing and sports business management. And because my original goal was to be the CEO of New Zealand Rugby League.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, so that was the original goal, and that came about. I was newly divorced. I was back living with my mum and dad with my young daughter, and I think something had happened at rugby league. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I kind of got a bit on my soapbox with mum and dad, and it was actually mum that said to me, "Well, why don't you go to university, get the qualification, and run the game?"
I,
And I was like, "Yeah, why don't I do that?"
oh,
Um, so yeah, so that was why I was at university. That was why I
I
decided I needed
love
to go to
it.
the Warriors. And
Now,
because I wanted to go to the Warriors and not New Zealand Rugby League, because I wanted to see the difference between, I guess, a professional club, the level of
mm,
the game that the Warriors were at, versus kind of that grassroots,
mm,
these who are only play maybe once or twice a year.
mm,
So I thought it was very different, and I thought I would probably learn enough about New Zealand Rugby League once I got there. I needed to learn about the other stuff. So
yeah.
that was kind of why I wanted to get into the Warriors. And then, during this time, I'm actually refereeing the game as well.
Oh,
So
I can't believe. Did you make CEO? I know
yeah, no,
you
no.
got up there though.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, so then I kind of changed, I definitely changed tack. And I'm a firm believer that everything happens in life for a reason, right?
Totally, totally,
Yeah, so
100%.
I did apply once. I did apply for the role, got down to the last three. So so I did actually have a crack at it. So, and I just figured it wasn't where I was meant to be. So I obviously had bigger things to do.
You, that's amazing.
Yeah, but so at the Warriors, got my first role there, and my title was football and community
Mm,
assistant. And so really what it was doing was logistics. So at that stage, the New Zealand Warriors men's team had developed into a junior team as well. So there was now the junior Warriors as well. So I did all the logistics for the junior Warriors. And then our community engagement I did. And at that stage, it wasn't really much. We might get a phone call from school going, can we have a warrior come out and talk to the
right.
kids? It might be that, someone would sort of say, oh, could you help us with this charity? But there was no real program of work or no real sort of activations or anything that we did. And I remember we had a school group come in. And so I was kind of with the school group, did a little bit of a tour of the gymnasium and then the kids kind of just went out and watched the training. And they watched the training for all of about 5 minutes, and then they were all like yahooing around and swinging and all that, just waiting until training had finished when they could go and like get autographs from the
Yeah.
players and things like that. And I was like, there must be something better we can do with this time. And so I made up a little workbook. I just printed them off on the photocopier at work, and it was a little workbook. So one, I put some puzzles in there. So there was like a word find of the players' names, and then there were some like little questions that they had to answer. So what is the guy in the orange jacket doing? Because that was one of the
Mm,
trainers. You know,
mm.
and can you work out what his job is? Can you see who the coach is? Where does he stand? What does he do? So, and I just kind of made up this little workbook like that, and then it got out. So we were getting bombarded with schools that wanted to
Right.
do this little program. And so then I was kind of like, oh, maybe there's something in this. So anyway, this developed into a massive body of work. In the meantime, I'm doing all sorts of other roles at the Warriors. I was event manager. I did all the major events. I did season launches, gala dinners, charitable golf days, you name it. I was organising all the
Wow.
major events. I would work on game day. So I was involved in game day operations. So actually getting the game on the field. I was involved in sponsorship servicing at that stage as well. So they kind of lent on my account management experience, and I
Yeah.
was doing a lot of sponsorship servicing, as well as the team logistics, as well as like kind
Oh
of
my God.
what the sort of community program was.
So when you left, what role were you? Was it always community based? Was it?
It was in the end, yeah.
Yeah.
So as the club kind of got bigger, they would pick off bits of my role.
Mm.
So I
Yeah, I
was
can imagine. Yeah. Yeah.
And at one stage, we did a bit of a restructure. So the woman who was my supervisor as a football and community assistant, she left, got married, and moved away. And so they restructured. And at that stage, they said to me, "Which role do you want? Do you want football admin or do you want community?" And I said, "I want community."
Right.
And
Community. Yeah.
yeah, and so they hired somebody for the football admin role, and so I stepped away kind of from that football admin and and went full time pretty much into developing what has now become. So when I left, I had set up the Warriors Community Foundation, a charitable organisation.
Oh, wow. But you
Yeah,
also set up before COVID, you also set up the Warriors women's football.
yeah, yeah. So the women's football had been going for a little while, a couple of years. I think we'd kind of been in the comp since about was it 2018, 2017, 2018, a couple of seasons. The first season, they brought in a crew of people. The second season, I stepped into a welfare role. So I actually became the welfare officer for the women's team. And that just meant that if any of the girls were having any issues or troubles or they wanted to talk to somebody, I was that person. I
Mm,
would do things like, because the women trained at night time, some of them were traveling quite a
right.
quite a bit of distance. A lot
Yeah.
of them were mums, a lot of them
Mm,
were single mums. So while I was welfare officer, I set up like a little creche for the mums that couldn't didn't have anywhere else to take their kids or
yeah.
didn't have anyone else to look after their kids. So we
Yeah.
set up a little creche, looked after the kids while the girls were training. Um, we would feed the girls, so we would, those that had to travel sort of a decent distance, we always made sure there was hot chicken, hot soup for
Love
after
it.
training. So little things like that that just made what they were trying to do a little bit easier because the women's game was nowhere near professional. When it first started, there were only 4 teams.
Right,
Um,
okay.
so
And
the
it is
season,
professional now, though?
yeah, I was
Yeah.
semi-professional. There's a few more teams. So
Yeah,
yeah,
got
there
it.
were only 4 teams. So that, the competition was only like 6 weeks long. It would
Mm.
only run in the men's finals series. So when the men's game went into finals, the girls' game started, so that both finals could be played on grand final day. Uh,
Right. Oh my God,
yeah,
that talk about, I mean, thinking outside the box, but I think since COVID, I mean, we've kind of locked ourselves away a bit, but I think now community is starting to become a bigger thing, um, because we've lost something, I think. And that I know here I'm going to be running a breakfast for a small group, 15 to 20 leaders, but over breakfast, just to get that connection happening. So, gosh, building that community just with those simple things, tapping into what you realize people actually needed to make life easier for them.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, these girls were putting it all out there. They were chasing a dream, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was kind of like, and I guess in some respects, I kind of felt like I was almost just paying it forward. Like there's
Mhm.
been several times in my life where I've been chasing a dream,
Yeah,
this one little thing that someone has done to make that path just a little bit smoother, you
yeah.
know. So that was kind of what I thought my role was, to be able to help the girls do the same thing.
Oh, I love
And I
that.
also think it's really empowering for kids to see, their parents chasing dreams and, putting it all out there and things like that. So I think, that's always really powerful too. But yeah, and then it was in 2020, the COVID year, where I became the team manager for the women's team.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
in COVID, so I'm just going to kind of paint a picture, and I could be wrong here, so correct me if I am. With the Warriors being, playing with the Australian team, so the only New Zealand team that would play with the Australian team every week or whatever it was, the team almost lived in Australia for quite long periods of time because of COVID. So they weren't there for the fans. They kind of weren't there for their family from a physical perspective. Was your role part of connecting them as well and keeping that community together through that period of time?
Yeah, it was. So the team actually got, because obviously our borders in New Zealand closed, right? And
Yeah,
they closed to
totally.
everybody. They closed to everybody. Even New Zealanders trying to come home, they were closed. They
Yes.
were locked down. So the team had to make the decision as
Mm.
to what they were going to do. And so they decided to get locked down in Australia. So our
Mm.
team from New Zealand was locked down in Australia for 3 years. So for 3 seasons, the Warriors weren't back here in New Zealand. They were off doing their thing. And so to keep our community program going, we
Yeah.
would do a lot of the sort of similar programs, but we would Zoom in the players.
Got it. Got
So
it.
we would have, so the classes were being run online, so you'd have these 20 little faces all on little screens on your computer, and then we would zoom in a player, and we would kind of have already set a lot of stuff up with the teacher. So it might be that the kids had to research who the player was, ask questions, that sort of scenario. So it was almost like being interviewed on
Yeah.
by a bunch of kids. So
Got it.
yeah, so the community program kind of kept running in that format. So we tried to still do as much as we could in regards to that community connection and our
Yeah.
connection back to the schools and all that sort of thing. We would do little things like we would run physical activities. So we would. So one of the people that worked for me was Georgia Hale, and she was actually one of our women's players as well. And she's honestly one of the fittest human beings I've ever met in my life. And so she would do little physical workouts and stuff like that for the kids online and things. Yeah, so we were definitely still keeping that community alive.
Awesome.
All of our work meetings were all online, as so many other people's work
Yeah.
meetings were. So when it came to time for the women's team, it was kind of like, well, what is this going to look like? Because there were still only 4 teams in the competition. So we were still only talking a 6-week period. And so what we ended up doing was we ended up getting special dispensation to be able to travel. But it meant that when we got to Australia, we had to have a 2-week lockdown.
Yeah, quarantine.
Quarantine,
Yeah.
yep. So we were
Yeah.
quarantined for 2 weeks. And then when we flew home to New Zealand, we were quarantined for 2 weeks. So
Yeah,
in total, I
that
think we were
commitment.
away for about 8 or 10 weeks, including the quarantines.
Unbelievable.
And it was also a really sort of interesting time because we didn't take a whole team from New Zealand, and
Okay.
there were lots of reasons that that happened. No one really knew what was going to happen with COVID. No one really knew what COVID was.
Mm,
We definitely didn't know what the long-term effects of COVID would be, if there were going to be any.
yeah, true.
So we had a lot of girls who lived in multi-generational families who couldn't afford to get COVID because they had immune compromised parents, or they had immune compromised children, or so there were some really, really tough decisions that had to be made by some of these women who were trying to chase their dream.
Yeah.
And it was like, do I take the gamble and do I go to Australia? Or and they were going to have to leave jobs as well, right? They were going to have to leave jobs behind, and for
So
like,
it was a
yeah,
commitment. It was a chase your dream moment. Like,
it was. It
seriously.
really
Yeah.
was. Yeah. So in the end, we only actually took 5 girls from New Zealand.
Okay.
I went as team manager, so I was the sixth person, and we took a wellbeing person with us as well.
Wow.
So all up, we were a traveling group of 7. Travelled to Australia. We got locked down on a little island in the Hawkesbury River called Milson's Point, I think
Oh,
it was.
yes. Yes.
So we got locked down on the island, and we had the whole island to ourselves.
That's
And
that
it was
little island just south of the Sydney Harbour Bridge.
Yeah, it used to be.
It
No,
was
no,
a penal colony.
it's further up the Hawkesbury River. So we
Oh,
went.
okay.
They chucked us onto a bus. We bussed up. We got off onto like a little boat, little ferry boat. They took us out to the island. I think the island used to be. I think it's had lots of life.
Yeah,
So I think
it
it's had a
has.
women's prison.
It
I think
has.
it's actually been a quarantine
Yeah.
island, and I think now it's like a school camp.
I've
Um,
got no idea. It's been years.
yeah,
I used to sail around it, but when I lived
yeah,
in Sydney. But I'm thinking about you saying chasing the dream, and when I think about what I've kind of uncovered about the Warriors, they've never won a premiership,
no,
and so for how many years? 30 odd years.
30 years this year. Yeah,
30 years and not won a premiership, and yet the fan base is so loyal and fierce and devoted. Um, what keeps that connection alive? Because there's no trophy to point at. So,
yeah,
and I was actually thinking, because I was reading something this morning, 93% of mid-market businesses have not met their growth goals this year. 91% of leaders are still very, very hopeful. And that got me thinking, is like, what is it how do you sustain and how do you build a community or connection when there is no trophy to point at?
yeah. So I guess I guess the Warriors are a bit bigger than that. Like, we are the only New Zealand team.
Mm,
The whole, I guess, probably more recently than previously, but we've really kind of built on the culture of New Zealand. What does it mean to be a warrior? It kind of almost means the same to be a New Zealander. Um,
love it.
because we are the Warriors, and we've always been heavily influenced in the Māori culture.
Mm,
Uh, I think that it is actually really helping us. And it becomes, I guess, from a New Zealand perspective, it's tribal now. You know,
interesting. Yeah, even the war cry is
totally.
is totally tribal.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and I guess it's proof that you ask the question, well, what are people buying? And they're clearly not buying results, so
no,
that they are buying what it stands for.
yeah,
Um, and that's what got me thinking, because I've kind of seen that with leadership, where in the losing seasons, the real leaders show up, um, not just in the winning seasons. And I think it's trust. A lot of it's trust. I remember when, gosh, we moved from Adelaide, South Australia, to Melbourne, and I was with Xerox, and I had kind of just taken a promotion job and in the sales sales leadership field. So I've gone up into this new division, and my leader, my manager at the time, like most sales people will do when you leave a territory or something like that, you'll clean it out, leave nothing for the person behind you. And he became my manager. And so I've come into this new role. I'm not selling $20,000 kits anymore. I'm selling six-figure. And the pipeline was empty. And it was a case of just about every month I'd go in and say, am I going to lose my job? Because I had nothing in the pipeline. And those deals you didn't just trip across. But they would say to me, Bernadette, we see you're doing the work. We've got your back. And so that's kind of like in the losing season. Who's got your back? And who's there to support you? And what community have you got around you that kind of elevates you? And that kind of reminded me of the work that you were doing, kind of building that community and building that connection with the team. Would I be right there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we only take 5 players away to basically a competition, we need to build a whole new team, and we need to build it fast.
Yeah,
you know
okay. Yeah.
and so for us it was really, we spent a lot of time while we were in that 2-week lockdown, asking ourselves, what does it mean to be a warrior? What are we going to tell these women that are coming into our team, what it means to be here in our team, and not just these pretty words on a board. Like, how do they live those words every day? Because they have to live those words now for the next 6 weeks, and we got to do it fast.
Yes. Yes.
And so we did things, we made a decision as a team that, the first thing that we would do before we met anyone else was we would porphyry them. So in New Zealand, that's a traditional welcome from the Māori people, right? You get called on, you get called into the space. You get welcomed into the space with speeches and waiata. So the 5 of us, we did that. We created our porphyry the first time any of the rest of the team. So while I was on the island for 2 weeks, I was contracting the rest of the team. So we'd secured a coach, which was amazing.
Yep.
And we've done all this help with the NRL too. The NRL were incredible through this whole process. So that helped us secure the coach, the strength and conditioning lead. I had an admin person who was kind of outside of quarantine that could help me as well. But in the meantime, we're just contracting, I think we contracted, was it 17 other players?
Wow.
So we were just going hard, like contracting these girls, trying to do it with terrible Wi-Fi. And so here we are kind of contracting this team. So I was the only one that had any contact with sort of like any of the girls outside. And then once we kind of had a team for the last week, we did things like we used WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And we each time we contracted a girl, they had to introduce themselves, and our girls gave them a challenge that they had to do.
Aha.
And it was little things. It was like, you had to act out your phone call with the coach when you got called up to the Warriors. You have to. We're from New Zealand. We've never seen snakes. You have to show us what a snake would
So
do.
just kind of like taking role play to a totally different level.
Totally, yeah. And it was kind of like how prepared were these girls to make a fool of themselves, to be vulnerable.
Interesting.
To these people they'd kind of never really met before. And so, we kind of broke down those walls like real quick, real fast. And so then when we got them together in this room with this porphyry, we then were able to start building those walls up again.
I love it. And I love what you said before about the words on the walls of companies, the values or whatever it is, that they're just not lived out. But I'm going to take this conversation, I'm going to pull a thread a little bit. I'm going to go a little bit deeper here again, because there is a connection. There's a connection here, and that connection is you and I are family.
We are.
So you are married to Petrece Kesha.
Yes.
My cousin. And Aaron is also in the league. He's president of the Auckland Referees Association. Correct me if I'm wrong
Yes.
there. So
Yep.
this is in the blood, but you mentioned before that you also refereed. Now, there's another guy that we're going to speak about, the man with the whistle,
Yeah.
and that is your father-in-law,
Yes.
Aaron's dad, and my uncle Neville, who
Yes.
passed away last year. Bless him.
Bless
And
him.
my mum's favourite brother-in-law too, by the way. Now, Uncle Neville was he was the referee for the Kiwis,
He
correct?
was an international referee,
He
so
national, but he would referee at all the international games.
yeah. So it wasn't always just the Kiwis, but he did do quite a few games with the Kiwis. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, there you go. So now there was one specific moment in his career that I think is a story that every leader should actually learn something from. Actually, and for anybody who doesn't know, the 1987 test that was between New Zealand and Australia was one of the biggest upsets almost in rugby league history to a degree. So New Zealand went across to Australia to play in the test as massive underdogs because the Australian team, they had all the heroes and all the egos and had all of those playing, and so the perception of New Zealand wasn't the highest, but they also did not want a New Zealand referee, but it was Neville who was the referee. Now,
That's right.
the captain of the Australian team, Wally Lewis, who was also known as the King, there was something that happened on the field. Do you want to tell that story?
Yeah. So I was very young when this game happened, by the way. Just
I do remember it, to be quite honest. I do remember the
I do remember it as well. But yeah. So a head high had occurred in the against the New Zealander, and Neville had penalised for it. And the king decided that perhaps that wasn't the best decision, and so he questioned Neville about the situation, and sort of perhaps was not quite so flattering in his asking as to why the penalty had occurred. And so off of the back of that, there's a very famous moment in the game where Wally Lewis does what in New Zealand what we call a pukana, which is where you sort of flash your eyes
Yep.
and pull faces and
Like the Maoris do, like the when they do the haka and whatnot.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that is kind of a challenge. And but Neville being Neville, you know, he was never going to change his mind. He was never going to be intimidated by Wally Lewis, and so of course the penalty stood. And the biggest outcry was the fact that the New Zealanders actually won that game.
They did.
And
Yeah.
you know, and that was like you say, you know, the New Zealanders played here in the local competition. They were selected from the New Zealand local competition, and they were basically, as far as the Australians were concerned, a bunch of nobodies. And we were going over there as the absolute underdogs to play all these superstars of rugby league in Australia. And so yeah, so for the New Zealanders to win that game, and I mean, to Neville's credit too, it was, you know, he refereed so many more games after that test, and I think that proves that, you know, the caliber of the referee that he was,
Yeah.
but also his, you know, he knew what he was doing. He, you know, he knew the rules. He was there to do a job, and he did his job. And
And I think that comes back to integrity and you know, just the fact, and you know what I know of Uncle Nev, I mean, very calm, very deliberate, and fair,
yeah,
and I think that, you know, you talked before about, you know, the words on the wall. I think there's two kinds of leaders that I've seen is when they're confronted like that, where there's a challenge of sorts, some will just go missing in action or disappear or retreat because they want to keep the peace, play the game, pardon the pun. But the other is the one that steps into their ego and really does kind of almost match the aggression or match the controlling side of it. And what I think, I've taken away from the story with Neville is the fact that if you hold true to your values as a leader, your non-negotiables, your unwritten ground rules, everybody wins.
Absolutely.
And so I want to move kind of, you've probably seen that because you've now left the Warriors, but you've gone into your own business, which is, finance and property and whatnot. So I'll kind of mention that later, but you're also working alongside the sporting, and we're taking the sports career down another path now, which is Athlete Leadership Network. And
Yes.
and so tell us a little bit about that, because I think that dovetails into a leader being able to, whether they hang their boots up, metaphorically or whatever, hang their boots up, their identity is still very much tied to what they've done as a performer, I guess, as a professional sports person. And the same applies in business, especially with men, because their identities are so tied to their role and what they do. And if for example, they're having to retire or being made redundant or whatever happens, and they've kind of lost their purpose a little bit, or they've lost their identity. And so sports people have a shelf life for lots of different reasons, injuries or whatever. And so do business people. And so I'm really curious, what do you see makes it hard for them to kind of go to that next level, whether it's like performer to leader or scoreboard to maybe, I don't know, boardroom or whatever it may be for life after sport?
Yeah, I guess it's understanding maybe that this, that rather than this being your whole identity, it's a chapter in your identity.
Mm.
And each chapter of a good book builds for the next chapter.
Yes, iterates. Yes.
Yeah. So rather than kind of seeing it as in like, this is it, I'm done. It's like, okay, what is this? What is this lesson, or what does this knowledge now allow me to build on and go to? And because just because an athlete stops being an athlete doesn't mean that they then lose all of that knowledge, all of those experiences.
Totally.
That's still there, right? And
Totally.
then it's also like, to your point before, what are those values that you have? For me, one of my really strong values is, is helping.
Contribution.
Contributing. Exactly.
Yeah. Connection.
Yeah. And so that's a really big piece for me. And so as long as I can do that, I don't really mind where I'm doing that.
Yeah.
As long as I can do that.
I hear you. And so what would your advice be to a leader that needs to perhaps evolve, but doesn't quite know, I don't know, what they're evolving to?
I think that's a lot of sitting down and talking to yourself.
Self-observation. Yes.
Yeah, just self-awareness.
Yes.
Having that self-awareness as in like, okay, I can't do that anymore. So, but I've got all this great stuff. What can I do? Where can I help? Who do I want to help?
Yeah.
Or these are the parts of what I used to do that I really did not like. These are the parts that I really love.
Yeah.
How can I do more of that?
Yeah, and that's I've gone through that the past 18 months. It's like, what are the areas of genius that you actually love doing that you would do if you did not get paid to do? And what don't you want to do? And like, let's kind of just drop that. So
it's even not so much, like if I couldn't get paid for it, it could be something as in like, what do I do when time flies?
Correct.
Yeah.
Momentum. It's momentum. Yeah.
Or what are they? Flow. They call it flow, right?
Inflow.
Flow. Yeah. So, and what are those things? What are those things that I'm actually doing when I feel in flow?
Yeah.
And even looking back to some of the stuff you've done. So for me, one of the things I loved doing was getting up in front of like an assembly of kids and giving them some really cool stuff to do, but having fun while we did it. So we would talk about healthy lifestyles, but we would have fun doing it. We would play games.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I loved doing that. I loved helping people live out their dreams, So okay, how do I do more of that?
Love
What
it.
are the things I didn't really like doing?
Love it.
As a typical salesperson, I'm pretty rubbish at admin. I've got better. I've got a lot better. But so it's kinda like, okay, well, how do I get someone else to do my admin?
Yep. Love
Yeah.
it, love it, love it. And this is the influence gap. This is exactly what the influence gap is. And it's that, for me anyway, it's creating change in you so that you can create change around you. That's my, I guess, definition of influence and in flow. So where you sit now, and we've been in sales, and you've made a huge impact in the rugby league movement in New Zealand, not just with the guys, but with the women as well, and the community. And now you've moved, to that next part, which is working with the athletes to help them find their voice and their next level of influence. And you also run your own finance and property business as well. It's like, my God, how many lives has this woman got? What's your, I guess, meaning of the word influence?
I guess my meaning of the word influence is just helping people find themselves and what's important to them.
Oh, love that, love that, love that.
Yeah, so it's not so much that I'm putting me onto them.
Yep.
It's more, how do I find out who you are? What spins your wheels? What's the life that you want to live? How do we help you influence yourself to then be able to influence others? So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That space between your intention and the impact that you want to make in the world.
Absolutely.
How can people reach out, connect with you, contact you, especially in New Zealand? Cultivate is your business, and we'll put all of that in the show notes. So what's the best way for people to connect with you, Petrece?
Yeah, Cultivate Wealth is my financial advice business, and the easiest way is through either LinkedIn,
yep,
or my website, so cultivatewealth.com. And just to know that cultivate, it's V number 8.
Number 8.
Yeah.
The number 8. So this has been fantastic. I've loved doing this, and I haven't finished yet because I have what I call the rapid fire.
Okay.
And so rapid fire, one word answers.
Okay.
One word answers. Are you ready?
Difficult for me, but okay.
Wally Lewis, villain or victim? Only kidding. Only kidding with that one. Okay, so community relies on
heart.
Connection means
belonging.
Love that. The biggest myth about the Warriors. One word. I don't know if that's going to work.
Underdogs.
Oh, yes, definitely. What do most leaders under-invest in?
Culture.
And lastly, revenue is a result of?
Connection.
Oh, I love that. Petrece Kesha, this has been an absolute pleasure. It's been so informative, so interesting. I've just loved hearing your journey. And I know that the lessons, that some of the ideas that you've shared, especially around community and around values and just around going for your dream, will apply to anybody. And I'd like to close this conversation off with a hat tip to someone very special. Uncle Nev.
Nice.
So thank you so much. And to everybody watching and listening, tune in this time next week, and I'll have another amazing conversation with another amazing guest. Bye for now. That's a wrap on today's episode of The Influence Gap. If this resonated with you, share it with a CEO or a sales leader who you think needs to hear it. And make sure that you subscribe so that you never miss one single episode. If you are ready to close the gap between your message and the impact you want to make. Come and find me at BernadetteMcClelland.com. I'll see you this time next week. Bye for now.